Have you ever had a thought you just couldn't escape? Maybe it was a face, a voice, a memory, or maybe it was an idea, looping endlessly in your head like a broken record. You try to move on, but the thought lingers. It wakes with you, walks beside you through the day, and returns at night when the world is quiet. That is obsession. A silent fire that burns in the background of the mind. Sometimes it warms, sometimes it consumes. But here's the question: why do we obsess? Why does the mind latch onto some things so tightly that we can't let go, even when we want to? And how does this strange force shape our lives, our choices, and even our very sense of self? The story of obsession is as old as humanity. Every great discovery, every piece of art, every revolution in history, at its root, was fueled by an obsessive mind. Yet the same force has driven people into despair, madness, and destruction. Obsession, it seems, is both a gift and a curse. To understand it, we have to go inside the mind. Neuroscience tells us that obsession begins with attention. The brain is constantly flooded with thoughts, thousands every hour, most of which vanish before we even notice them. But occasionally, one catches our focus. It may be linked to desire, fear, or even unresolved memory. When that thought stirs emotion, the brain's reward system, powered by dopamine, lights up. Dopamine doesn't simply give pleasure, it creates craving. It's the chemical whisper saying, "Come back. Think of this again. Don't let it go." This cycle is the seed of obsession. The more we revisit the thought, the stronger the pathways become, until it feels less like a choice and more like gravity pulling us in. Like a planet locked in orbit around a star, our minds circle the same point again and again. But obsession isn't only about chemistry, it's about identity. When we obsess, we often tie the fixation to who we are. A career-driven individual obsesses over success because it validates their worth. A lover obsesses over their partner because the relationship defines their sense of belonging. A perfectionist obsesses over tiny details because the idea of failure threatens their self-image. In other words, obsession attaches itself to the things we believe we cannot live without. Consider how this plays out in history. Think of Nikola Tesla, working day and night on experiments that few others could even comprehend. His obsession with electricity, invention, and the future of humanity drove him to brilliance, but also isolation. He died alone in a hotel room, his mind still burning with ideas the world wasn't ready for. Or Vincent van Gogh, whose obsession with color and expression gave us masterpieces, but at the cost of his peace and stability. Obsession creates legends, but it also creates tragedy. Yet obsession isn't always grand. For most of us, it lives in the everyday. The teenager who can't stop refreshing their social media feed, desperate for one more like. The employee who replays an awkward conversation for days, dissecting every word. The parent who obsesses over their child's safety until worry replaces joy. These are not works of genius, but they shape our lives just as powerfully. Because obsession, in its most basic form, is about control. Or rather, the illusion of control. When something feels uncertain, when love might be lost, when success might slip away, when a future feels unstable, the mind clamps down, circling around the problem as if repetition could solve it. Obsession is the brain's way of saying, if I just keep looking, I'll find certainty. But certainty rarely comes. Instead, we stay trapped in the loop. Psychology has a name for one form of this: rumination. It's the mental replay button stuck on repeat, where we go over mistakes, regrets, or fears again and again. Research shows that rumination is one of the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety. The more we obsess, the more our world shrinks, until we are not living life. We are simply watching it repeat inside our minds. But here's the paradox. Obsession is not just pathology. It is also power. Many of humanity's greatest achievements were born of obsessive pursuit. Albert Einstein once said, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." What he described wasn't mere persistence, it was obsession. The relentless refusal to let go of a question until an answer reveals itself. Without obsession, science stalls, art fades, progress halts. So, is obsession good or bad? The truth is, it depends on who is in control. When we harness obsession, it becomes passion. Passion drives musicians to practice until their fingers bleed, athletes to train through exhaustion, and writers to labor over words for years. But when obsession harnesses us, it becomes a cage. Then, instead of pushing us forward, it holds us hostage. Philosophers have long wrestled with this tension. Freud believed obsessions were the return of repressed desires, thoughts too uncomfortable for the conscious mind to accept, so they disguise themselves as fixations. Jung saw them differently, as the psyche's way of demanding integration, forcing us to confront the parts of ourselves we ignore. In both cases, obsession isn't random, it's a message. Something within us wants to be seen. And maybe that's why obsessions feel so powerful. They are not just thoughts, they are signals. Sometimes they point to wounds we haven't healed. Sometimes they point to values we've forgotten. Sometimes they point to possibilities we haven't yet realized. The challenge is knowing which is which. Think about love. When people fall in love, obsession often follows. Texts, glances, the sound of their voice, it all consumes the mind. Neuroscience shows that romantic love activates the same brain regions as addiction. That's why heartbreak feels like withdrawal. The brain is literally craving the missing person. It explains why people replay old messages, revisit places, or stalk social media profiles long after a relationship ends. It's not just emotion, it's neurochemistry. Or take ambition. For entrepreneurs, obsession often feels like the only path. Elon Musk once admitted that his work consumed nearly every hour of his day, leaving little room for anything else. For him, obsession built rockets and cars. For others, the same drive leaves broken relationships and burnout in its wake. The difference lies not in the presence of obsession, but in how it is directed, and whether the cost is worth it. But what about the darker side? Obsession with revenge has fueled wars and vendettas lasting generations. Obsession with appearance has fed eating disorders that ruin health. Obsession with wealth has turned lives into hollow pursuits. Obsession with control has led to authoritarian regimes and ruined families. At its worst, obsession isn't about love or ambition or art. It's about fear. Fear of loss. Fear of failure. Fear of insignificance. So how do we break free? The answer isn't to kill obsession, but to transform it. Because obsession is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be redirected. Therapists often teach people to separate themselves from their obsessive thoughts. Instead of saying, "I am obsessed," they suggest saying, "I notice that I'm obsessing." This small shift creates space. It reminds us that we are not our thoughts. We are the observers of them. Meditation builds the same skill. The more we learn to watch our thoughts without clinging, the less power they hold over us. The obsession still appears, but it no longer dictates our every move. So ask yourself, what obsessions are ruling your days? Are they pulling you forward or holding you back? And if you could choose one thing, one pursuit, one idea to obsess over for the rest of your life, what would it be? Because in the end, your obsessions shape your destiny. If this journey into the observer within made you pause and reflect, subscribe and share your thoughts, because sometimes the deepest answers come from the questions we explore together.